Welcome to Forest Chat, where we talk about individual endeavour in Western Australia, what it takes, what it means, and how you do it. I'm your host, Paul Vandermeer, and in today's episode, we're talking with Blake Glossop about being a football umpire. Blake started umpiring at 14 years of age, umpiring juniors, and then progressing through to waffle umpiring. Welcome to Forest Chat, Blake.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for having me on. I'm really excited. Looking forward to today's chat.
Pleasure to have you here, Blake. Blake, you're an umpire of football. What does umpiring football entail?
Yeah, so there's a few things. I'm a boundary umpire within the Waffle squad. I've managed to do 6 league games, which is very exciting. So what it entails is essentially every week on a Tuesday, I look at the board at training to see where I'm umpiring on the weekend. I get sent out to various different grounds, turn up, make sure I'm nice and warm, and then I'm on the boundary for close to 2 hours boundary umpiring the game. So essentially, my role's fairly straightforward. I just have to decide whether the ball's still in or whether the ball's gone out. Sometimes I assist the goal umpires to help them, but boundary umpires do a lot of the heavy lifting around. After a goal, we take the ball back to the centre. It's very enjoyable. Yeah, aside from adjudicating the game and aside from helping the game run and helping everything flow, yeah, it's great to just be with your fellow umpires out there.
You've mentioned there about fellow umpires. There's a structure of umpiring, isn't there? Can you expand on that? What's that look like?
Yeah, so at the waffle level, we've got field umpires, which everyone's familiar with, goal umpires and boundary umpires, as you'd see at AFL games. And so that's at the waffle level, and that's creeping more and more into the junior level. So aside from my waffle duties, I'm also the umpire manager for the Demons District Junior Football Umpiring Association. And so what that means is I essentially look after all of the young umpires and I look after the coaches, and the coaches oversee the appointments of all the young umpires, but I'm there to help them out and help junior umpires and people getting into umpiring and starting their umpire journey in that space. So there's a nice structure there of mostly young umpires now starting out in the junior ranks, and then if they want to continue progressing up the juniors, doing PFL umpiring, so that's your amateurs, and then also potentially moving into the waffle system as well. In juniors, it's mostly just, especially for Perth, from when I started, it was all field umpiring and would only be boundary and goals during the finals series. So that would come just at the end of the year for a few weeks. That's been the case since I've started, but going into this year, we'll be looking at having goal umpires and boundary umpires for all of the season, if possible, like some of the other junior districts around the state.
So some already have that full suite of 3 different umpiring types at every game, but the Perth region, the Demons region you mentioned, that is just starting that off this year?
Yeah, it's a bit of a complex system. People familiar in the junior football space will know what I mean when I talk about conferences. And so Perth District is part of the Central Conference. And within the conference, there's 3 different umpiring clubs. There's the Perth Club, East Perth Club, and the Swan Districts Football Club. And so essentially all of the junior teams will play each other depending on how the divisions are fitted and everything. And so Perth, the umpiring district, mostly looks after games within the Perth district. Sometimes we go to other districts to help out with numbers to try to get all the games covered. And those other umpiring districts, they've been training goal umpires and boundary umpires. And so it's not all games, but they try to get the full suite of field, boundary, and goals to some of the games. So like year 11, 12 games will most likely have goal umpires and boundary umpires if they're supplying them. And so going forward to this year, we're looking at starting off a boundary program and a goals program. So we're still working on looking at how that's going to run, how often we train everyone, but we're looking at implementing the other disciplines throughout the season.
So you mentioned the conference and you're talking clubs. So I'm familiar with like football clubs and potentially hockey clubs and that sort of thing. So umpires are a separate club, is that correct?
Yeah, so there's 3 clubs essentially, and we're all fairly similar to a football club or a hockey club with some slight differences. So within our club, we've got the 2 squads. We have a open rule squad and a modified rule squad. An open rule squad officiate games within the youth competition. So what that means is basically all year 7 to year 11 and 12 games, and then the modified rule squads are essentially for all new umpires joining, and they umpire year 3s to year 6s mainly. If they're really talented, then they may push up and umpire some older games. And yeah, so each club, we meet for training. In Perth, my club, we meet for training every Wednesday night. We start at 5:30 sharp and we run until around 7:15. So general training night. We all meet inside to start with. But before training, like most footy clubs, we've got a set of bowls. So all umpires, they might be taking shots at goal, playing king of a pack, just mucking around before training begins, as you generally see in a footy club. And then once training starts at 5:30, we bring everyone in. We go over any admin updates, and so that's just ticking off, okay, what's happening this week at games. So within the junior competition, there's special rounds. So there's the soccer to sarcoma round where we can wear odd socks, and it's raising money for sarcoma research. So it's just a gold coin donation. So it's just a reminder. Admin updates is just a time to remind all umpires, okay, this is what's happening this round. Updates could be a variety of things, from that to some more serious issues. After updates, we generally split off into our 2 squads, and each squad may be inside and may be outside for an education session. And so the education session will go over the laws of the game, make sure everyone's on the same page, or maybe outside focusing on skills. And another part of training is we'll have an S&C, so a strength and conditioning component, which is essentially just running. So it's a running program which we follow and we get all umpires to do so that we're nice and fit and we're able to run out our games.
You've just talked about rules and strength and conditioning and skills, but what does it take you to be a football umpire?
For me personally, I'll start where I'm at currently within the Waffle. So with Waffle, we train on a Tuesday and a Thursday night. Our main component of training is our running program, our strength and conditioning. And so Tuesday, Thursday night, we spend a good 40 minutes to an hour on our running program. So fitness at the Waffle level is a major requirement. Knowledge of the laws, learning all the laws is also a major aspect. And so that's another part of on a Thursday night at Waffle. We all sit in, and it's great because all of our games are recorded. And between our game and between the Thursday night at training, we're tasked with rewatching our games and creating little clips of where we've done well. This is an area we can improve. And so a major education in boundary umpiring comes with positioning. So it's one, knowledge of the laws, but also the knowledge of positioning, so you're in the best position possible. Yeah, so knowledge of the laws, knowledge of where you need to be. And one of the major things that was drilled into me when I first started boundary umpiring with Waffle was just knowing what the risk is. And so what the risk is okay, where's the ball currently? My job is to protect the boundary line essentially, and what's the greatest risk, whether it is the ball going towards the goals or coming towards me, towards the boundary. So the major aspects: fitness, knowledge of your role, knowledge of the laws surrounding your role, and confidence as well. Being calm, being confident to be able to make the decision and sell the decision. Especially with young umpires, it's really important they have the confidence, because you're always going to get questioned by people on the other side of the boundary line whether your decision was correct. So if you're confident in your decision-making skills, it really helps and goes a long way.
You can see a tie in there between your positioning that you mentioned about being in the right place so that you can make those decisions, and then that helps you to be more confident about your decision if you got into the right spot and you could see what was going on. Whereas the punter on the outside of the field, they didn't see the same thing or from the same angle.
Yeah, especially with boundary umpire, all aspects of umpiring really. It's about getting into the best position possible to see the game and let the game unfold. And so on the boundary line, we talk about tangents a lot, and being on a tangent to where the ball is. I'm getting a bit mathematical here, which kind of stems into my study, but you just would be on that tangent where as the ball's getting close to the line, you draw the tangent through the arc. So you're getting off where everyone else on the other side of the line is. There might be one or two people on the same tangent as you. Everyone else doesn't quite have the same view, because it is a very fine line where all the ball has to be over all of the line, and you're looking for that little bit of daylight between the ball and the line So there's times where there's the ball on top of the line still and it's still in play. You really have to be on that tangent to see everything unfold and make sure you get the correct decision there.
And that's where the fitness comes in, because you might be needing to move pretty quickly if someone's kicked the ball and it's travelling at an angle. I imagine it's a bit simpler when it's 90 degrees, but when it's at an angle, it could be crossing anywhere along the line, and you've still got to get yourself into the right spot.
Yeah, fitness is really important. So most games I cover at least 12 to 13 Ks. That's running, and most of that is sprint efforts. There's a few longer runs in there, and there's a fair bit of backwards running as well. Some more intense games and longer games, I might get up to 15 to 16 Ks. It's really important to work as a team of boundary umpires around to make sure one person isn't suffering too much and doing a lot of the heavy lifting. But the fitness is really important, both anaerobic and aerobic fitness, to be able to do repeat sprints around the ground and also to run out each quarter. In league game or in reserves games in Waffle, each quarter goes for 28 minutes. So it's a fair amount of time. Fortunately, we have trainers run water out to us, and sometimes you ask the clubs, the teams playing, they might have a water runner close by, so you get a quick refuel. But most of our fitness and like managing our nutrition happens at before the game or during the quarter breaks. League games, you never know how long each quarter is going to go for because you have 20 minutes and then time on. So every time a goal's kicked, from when the goal umpire signals to when the field umpire balls it back up to resume play, that time's added on. So during a league game, you might be fortunate and have a quarter only go for 24, 25 minutes, or you might have a quarter that goes for, and the longest I've had, I think it went for about 34, 35 minutes. Yeah, it's really important to have that fitness component and also to have the discipline and the mental aptitude to keep pushing through those harder sprints and harder efforts.
That's an interesting thing, because the actual physicality of it, you're off running it around the field to get yourself into the right spot, and then you've actually got to keep your eye on the game as well. So your body almost has to disappear from that perspective. It needs to be like second nature. Whereas if you were to enter a 10K run or a half marathon or something, then it's all about your running and you just focus in on that one thing. You're just avoiding hitting things and falling over, basically.
Yeah, you have to keep the eye on the game. So I do a lot of backwards running during a game, just so if I'm running back towards goal, but the ball's behind me, is I've got to turn around, have my back towards the goal. I've got to keep myself on the correct line. And a few times you just have to hope there's no runners or water carriers behind you. Otherwise, you could be in for a collision. But most of the time, they're fairly good and they're out of the way. Yeah, so it is quite challenging keeping it all there. And then on top of that, once it gets later in the quarter and you're starting to fatigue, you really have to know that you know all the laws off by heart, so that like you're not questioning your decision. You are under fatigue, so it does make everything a bit harder. But if you just have the composure and take a second to process what's happened and then make the decision, it's really helpful.
Do you do any specific training for that? Like you do training to understand the rules and when you did things well and not quite as well, but that actual under fatigue levels and making decisions?
Yeah, so sometimes at training, after we've done our running session, when we are fatigued, that's when we focus on skills. And so other skills I focus on are obviously throwing the ball back in. So we'll do a lot of that after we've done our main training session, just when we've got all the lactic acid in the quads. So it's fairly similar to footy players. I played footy up until year 12. A lot of the times we would, at the end of a training session, we're still focusing on our kicks and making sure we're hitting the target and some of those harder drills when we are under fatigue. And it's very similar our umpire training, where after we've done our running session, we'll focus on our throws or we'll focus on some decisionals. And so our decisionals are essentially, there's two of us on the boundary line on either side, and everyone else is along the boundary line in the middle. They're hand passing, they're kicking the ball along the line. There's a lot of close calls, and it's a lot of fun.
So that's the beauty of training. You get in there and just have a go and keep practicing and getting more and more experience making those calls.
Yeah, it's great training with a lot of the older, more experienced umpires as well, helping out and running through. Yeah, that we just practice, we make sure we're getting all of our decisions correct and making sure we're in the best spot.
We've had a look at what it takes to be an umpire, and there's some very interesting things in there about operating at a high level under fatigue. We'll have a break now, and after the break, we'll have a look at what it means. We've had a look at what it takes, and now we'll have a look at what it means. Blake, what does it mean to you, your family, or the community that you're able to umpire football games?
Yeah, I'll focus mostly on my work as umpire manager because for me it's mostly about giving back to the community and giving back to where I started my umpire journey. So as we've mentioned earlier, I started when I was 14. I was in year 9, and it was just a way for me to make a little bit of pocket money on the weekend. And for most young umpires and everyone starting out, what it means at that level, it's giving back to the wider community. It's being able to service the game and ensure that junior games of football do go on. If there are no umpires, then it's an extra volunteer burden for all the junior clubs, and they have to run around trying to find an umpire for the game, and it's not something that every parent wants to do. And so it's providing for the community in that sense. But for me as umpire manager within the Perth District and umpiring all my junior footy there, now as umpire manager, I'm giving back to all the young umpires that are just starting and hopefully providing a safe space for them to start their umpiring career and being able to watch them develop their career and start out and then maturing and starting their progress down the talent pathway is really rewarding, which is really nice to see there. When I first started my umpiring career, so I started in year 9, umpired that first year, and then I started my second year. I was in year 10 myself, and I was umpiring some junior games, and I'd started to umpire a few games on the Friday night, which at that stage, and it still is now, but at that stage, essentially all the female games were on the Friday night. The female competition was just kicking off. Since I've started, that female competition space has really grown, and sometimes they have games on Sunday depending on fixturing, and mostly that has to do with do certain grounds have the light capacity to be able to operate on Friday night or not. That's a different topic though. Yeah, so when I first started, I was mostly doing Saturday games, and I started transitioning into Friday night games, which worked really well for me because I could umpire on Friday night, have a rest on Saturday, and then play on Sunday, just so I wasn't completely exhausted. Sometimes I'd umpire Friday, Saturday, and then play Sunday. But in my second year, while I was still playing footy, during a footy game, I dislocated my right hip, took the ambulance to hospital, they put it back in, but it meant that I was on crutches for 3 months and I couldn't run for the rest of the year. So I had a bit of a struggle on crutches. Obviously, couldn't umpire anymore, couldn't play footy anymore. We all went skiing as a family. I couldn't go skiing, which is a bit disappointing. But I still found ways to help out at my footy club when I was still trying to get down to some training sessions and help out around. And then it was just a slow build back. But the environment down at the umpiring club was great during the first year, and during the little bit of the second year that I was there for, it made me want to come back for my third year once I completely healed and I was able to run around again. Yeah, so the environment at training each week was something that I really looked forward to, and being part of the team was great.
There's an injury there that took you out of the game for a while, but the club environment was very important to help you get over that as well.
Yeah, the club environment, both at juniors and at the waffle level, is unbelievable. When I was first starting, the club environment at juniors it is a fairly similar environment to a footy club, where you've got all your mates that you're meeting up with at training each week. Before training starts, we'll have the balls out, footies out, kicking it around to each other, having shots on goal, and just general banter around the club. It's a great environment, and it's something that I'm trying to keep alive as my time as umpire manager. And then the environment at waffle level is also superb, and so it's fairly similar to more senior footy clubs, where with their WAMFLA, which is the Special Umpires Association, they put on great events for us. We might have a sausage sizzles after training. Some nights the bar will open up for a few drinks after training. So then they also put on some other events. So at the end of the season, we have our awards night. Aside from that, just the club atmosphere, we do other events such as Mad Monday. So it's very similar to a football club in that sense, and it creates a great environment because you go down twice a week. You see all your peers, your colleagues, but they're also all your friends and all your mates and people you enjoy going to each game to, and you look forward to each game, umpiring with them, supporting each other and having fun. An example I'll give there is sometimes you're at a game, and as a boundary umpire, I find I do it sometimes where you might see a specky, a really great mark, or a really fantastic shot on goal that you can't believe has gone in. And at the next break and play, or at the next quarter time break, you go to your fellow boundary umpire and it's like, can you remember that goal? Can you remember that mark? That was something special. And so you talk about these moments in games with each other, and then back at training, you talk about some special moments in games that you remember.
Great memories that you build, and you're able to share them pretty much with people who are in a similar position. So that's very valuable and encouraging for both of you. Is there anything else in the meaning space?
Yeah, so back at the junior level, before I was a field umpire essentially there for close to 5 years, I'd been field umpiring for. I'd had a few coaches coach me through that time, and it got to a stage where a few of them were leaving uni, they had extra work commitments, they weren't quite able to coach us anymore. And I got a call one day asking if I wanted to be a coach for the modified rule squad, which I accepted that role. And so I was looking after all the young umpires, first starting all the younger games, and then on Saturday I would go out to watch the young umpires. So I was giving back to the community again on the Saturday. And so I'm really appreciative of all my coaches now giving up all their time on weekends to go out and watch all these young umpires and help them to develop and provide them feedback to provide support to them so that they're able to develop and improve their skills. Yeah, because it was a tough role. I was the coach with the modified rule squad for 2 years. For that first year, I didn't have anything on the Saturday, so I was able to go out and watch all the young umpires develop, and then I would umpire on the Sunday, doing the older age groups. And then while I was coaching the modified rule squad, I got an email asking for boundary umpires in the PFL, and so I decided to jump on that ability. But at that time I was very focused on giving back to all the young umpires and helping them develop. So my availability was very limited. But I managed to get some later games in down at the local club, who had some games starting at 3 or 4 o'clock. So I was able to coach in the morning and then boundary umpire in the afternoon and then do a game on Sunday as well. And I was fortunate enough that some of my PFL games I did with one of the coaches at Waffle. So I did a few games with him, and he saw some potential in me, so invited me to join the Waffle squad for the following year. That took a slight hit on my ability and my availability with the modified rule squad. So my second year coaching the modified rule squad, I just joined the Waffle squad, and then so there was a fair few. I was doing Waffle Colts games on a Saturday morning most of the time, which impacted my ability to be able to give back to all the young ones and like help them develop on Saturday mornings, as I wasn't able to go out to the games anymore. So I just joined Waffle, and then so I was coaching for 2 years. I'm really appreciative of all the coaches currently, especially all the match day coaches who also go out of their way to support all the young umpires and help them develop, especially while I'm unavailable to do that, as I've got Waffle commitments. And most of my senior coaches at the Perth Club currently have Waffle commitments, which makes it harder for them to go out and develop. So we really appreciate all the work that all the match day coaches do at providing feedback to umpires and then providing feedback to coaches to allow everything to run nice and smoothly. Yeah, while I've been umpire manager, it's meant I've had to look after all days, so Friday nights, Saturdays and Sundays, which gets very full on. And there's definitely times during the week where I've got Waffle commitments and I'm unavailable to assist. So it's great that all the match day coaches are able to give back as well.
In your role as a umpire manager, you're also managing the coaching element of that, are you?
Yeah, the coaches mostly look after appointments, so signing umpires to games. As an umpire manager, I'll have a look over it and make sure everything seems reasonable. And then I'll also make sure all the coaches are on top of everything, just making sure they've got their content sorted for the year. When it comes down to the trophy presentation or the end of the year with finals, making sure they're on top of everything for there in terms of speeches and everything. And then as an umpire manager, I'll also look after communicating with the WFC, making sure everything's aligned in that aspect. And then I also look after red and yellow cards, which is the major topic. So if there's any cards during a game, umpires have to let me know, and then I make sure everything's filled out correctly and everything's sorted before it gets passed on to the competition. And I'll also look after tribunals if anything happens. So I'll get notified, okay, this red card's going towards a tribunal. I'll attend that with the umpire to support them. I mostly focus on a lot of the administrative tasks around ensuring everything runs smoothly. But I've also found that since I've had the couple of years' experience as a coach, I'm able to help the coaches out. And so if they need anything at training, I'm always around to be able to assist. But mostly it's focusing on the umpires' individual needs and assisting them. We've got a special website that we recently switched to called Officials HQ. It's very new, so sorting everything out on that, making sure umpires are able to put their availability in. Another thing I focus on is in conjunction with other umpire managers of the other clubs within the conference, we look at all the fixtured games for each week and split the games evenly so each club gets their fair share of games and is able to cover as many games as they can. And so we take turns doing that and also communicating to all the junior clubs to ensure that, okay, these games have umpires. Is there any issues going on for them to let me know? Once I've got all the fixtures, I send all the fixtures to my coaches to allow them to fill them all out. So I'm mostly a support role for the coaches, but I'll look after other admin roles here and there.
Sounds like it's a pretty central role in everything that goes on with making the games happen.
Yes, there's a fair bit of work involved at irregular hours, but we all manage to find a time to work it all out and fit it in to ensure that everything runs as smoothly as it possibly can.
There's a lot of meaning in being a football umpire and also in being a umpire manager. We'll have a break now, and after the break, we'll have a look at how you do it. We've had a look at what it means to be a football umpire. Now, let's have a look at how you do it. Blake, if someone was to want to become an umpire for football, how would they go about it?
Yeah, so the way I started was I joined the junior club. So at that time, I got in contact with the umpire manager, went down to the training at the start of the season to get started. So if anyone within the Perth District and who's interested in umpiring, the easiest way would be to get in touch with me. And so you can do that simply by email. So if you want to umpire within the Perth District, the email to get in touch with is umpiremanager@demonsumpires.com.au. So at Demons Umpires is demons with an S, umpires also with an s.com.au. So if anyone within the Perth District wants to get into umpiring, send me an email and I'll get back to you. Traditionally, we begin training the first Wednesday of March, so there's still a few weeks away. We haven't started discussing training plans with coaches yet. We're still a few weeks away, but training begins in the Perth District. Traditionally, first week of March, we're looking at potentially starting the second week. Anyone in the Perth District, get in contact with me. Umpiring accepts everyone from not quite all ages. So if you're looking at getting to field umpiring, you need to be 12, turning 13 during the year, whereas boundary and goal umpires, Australia-wide, you need to be 9, turning 10 to start. But if you're older, if you're a parent, an adult, also looking to begin umpiring, that's great. The game needs more umpires, so as many people umpiring as possible is great. Currently, a lot of our umpires will umpire 2 games in a row, back to back, which is a lot of work and is quite fatiguing. So the more umpires is better. So it doesn't matter how old you are, you're always welcome down in a junior club. So the best way to start would be have a look, find out what your junior club is. A lot of the names are fairly straightforward. So whatever district you're in, whether it's Perth, East Perth, Swans, South Fremantle, East Fremantle, so on, so on, just Google the umpiring club, and most of the names are after the names of the district. So Google the district name, Google umpiring club, find the umpire manager, get in contact with them. A new role that's opening up with most umpiring clubs this year. Not all clubs, most clubs will be trying to have them, is the recruitment and retention role. So someone purely focused on recruiting umpires. So if you find someone and that role's been announced on a website or within the club, get in contact with that person. They'll be able to help you out. Otherwise, find an umpire manager, speak to them, and they'll let you know whenever each club is starting. These days, a lot of younger umpires are starting with the junior clubs. You can be a parent, as I mentioned. We have a few parents and a few adults within our club, and their calmness and approach is great, and it's great on the field. And so the more adults is great, and to be able to support young umpires coming through. So don't be afraid if you're older to come down. You can also start your umpiring journey in the PFL. So that's the Perth Footy League, that's the amateurs, that's the seniors on the weekend. So some of the lower divisions, go find your local football club. They might need an umpire, whether that's field or goals, or even on the boundary. Just have a chat to your local club and they'll be able to help you out. Or you can look up the PFL and the PFL umpiring program, which they have a great program. They train at the same venue as us on similar nights. They're on a different oval but close by, and they've got access to fairly similar facilities as we do. And that's a great program up there as well. So that is mostly for if you are slightly older. That's where a lot of people go, but I really encourage come down to the junior clubs as well.
Sounds like there's plenty of opportunities around the place. If I was about to start being an umpire, what about my level of fitness?
Pretty much all umpiring clubs have a running program. I would encourage people to have a decent base level of fitness to start with. Our modified rules, our junior games, so they're year 3 to 6s, they are all one umpire system, and that is going to be pretty much state, or at least within Perth metro region, that's going to be metro region wide, where all year 3 to year 6 games will only have the one field umpire on them. Umpires just starting most games will have a coach with them. Sometimes, if they're lacking a bit of confidence, a coach may come on the field to help them out. Those games each quarter 15 minutes, so it's an hour long, and you need to be able to keep up with play in those games. It is smaller ground, younger age groups, so the kicks don't go as far. But if you're able to run for 60 minutes and a constant run, so if you're just going for a long run anytime, that's a decent base, as long as you're constantly able to keep moving. And then older games, quarters range from 15 to 20 minutes. It's a slightly bigger oval, but you are with a partner. There is a second umpire on the field with you. So you essentially control half the ground and then you hand it over. But you work in tandem up and down the ground at both ends. So it's not quite half each. It's you share some parts of the ground. If you're able to run for 60 minutes, if it's a jog, if you can just keep moving for a decent length of time, even if you want to break it up into 2:30s, have a drink, have a break. One aspect of any footy game is there are quarter breaks and halftime breaks for you to be able to recover, which is great. Refuel, get the nutrition back in. So it is important to have the base level of fitness. But if you're joining an umpiring club right at the start of the season, we all have our pre-season time, like any football club. So it's a pre-season. There's a heavy focus on running to get fit, to get in shape for the start of the season. So if you're joining right at the start, you're not quite sure how to follow a running program, we'll have a running program ready and just follow along, which I find personally it's so much easier running with a group of people than it is if you're trying to follow a program by yourself, especially if there's a harder session where it's repeat sprints. If you have a group of people, friends that you're running that running session with, it's a lot easier than trying to do it by yourself. So join at the start of the season, get into the running program right at the start, find new people, make some new friends. The fitness isn't much of an issue as you're starting.
Is there any particular equipment that you need?
Yeah, it does depend on each club and what each club provides. Obviously, you need a whistle. That's really important. Last year at Perth, all umpires who paid their fees we gave all of them a whistle and a pair of socks for game day. So it does depend on each club, but a whistle is very important. In terms of equipment, speak with your local club what they're providing you and what you need to get yourself. Most of the time, you'll need to get the uniform. So there's an on-field uniform, what you wear during the game, an off-field uniform, what you wear to and from the game, a good pair of sneakers or boots. I have a few pairs of shoes that I use. We call them flats, just really good running shoes. I use them, I'd say 80% of the year. We're very fortunate in Perth where I can wear flats and essentially sneakers to most games, and I really recommend. When I first started, I was just wearing my footy boots because I was footy. You're running around, you're changing direction all the time. I was comfortable in boots, and so I was umpiring in boots, which were fine. And boots are required if you're going to go umpiring, or boots are required if it's a really wet and muddy day and you might be at a ground where it doesn't drain too well. So you need boots just so you don't slip over. But 80% of the time, I wear running sneakers. And if you're just starting and you want something really comfortable, sneakers are, if you've got a good pair of sneakers, really important. So the main equipment is on-field, off-field uniform, which ask your local club about, the whistle, and really comfy shoes to be able to run around in.
So not too much really. The one I didn't think about, of course, was the uniform, but that's an important part of being identifiable on the field, isn't it?
Yeah, the uniform's really important. Some clubs will provide parts of the uniform, and then other equipment you might need the red and yellow cards, sweatbands, and things like this. You most likely find at your umpiring club, but have a chat to your umpire manager. And then also we have uniforms for at training, so we have a sense of team like any football club. Every umpire club has their training uniform. This is both at junior and at the waffle level, and it creates a really nice team environment each week.
You'll learn the rules on the go, won't you?
Yeah, we've got a foundations of umpiring course that all new umpires will complete. We run this at training, so you attend training sessions, you go through the course, and that provides the very, very foundations, the very basics, such as positioning. It takes us 4 weeks. We go through a course, and each club will run a similar course to this before you start, so you have the basic knowledge. And then a lot of the learning comes from during games or after a game, especially when you're first starting. It is hard to replicate a footy game at training. It's very difficult, now especially with all the contact. We're trying to not have any injuries at training. So drills at training and skills at training we are focused on. A lot of it is learnt during a game and after a game. Fortunately, there's more and more resources for us to use. So we do have some older footage of some junior games where we essentially watch back some decisions, go through some processes, and we run through what the decision was it correct, how you go about making the correct decision, what you're looking for. Those resources are growing, which is great. And so there is a lot to be learned at training, but a lot of your learning is at a game with a coach and talking through each decision and what you look for, your cues and everything.
Well, thank you very much, Blake, for being on Forest Chat. There's certainly a lot to being a football umpire, and all Forest Chat listeners wish you all the best with your future endeavours.
Thank you, Paul. It's been great to be a part of Forest Chat. It's been great to talk about my umpire journey and current experience. And yeah, I really encourage anyone wanting to get into football umpiring, wanting to be a part of football still, become an umpire. It's great fun watching the games and being a part of the game still. It is the best seat in the house. It's a lot better than being 50, 100 metres away on the sidelines. You can get nice and close to the action and be a part of it still. So it is 100% the best seat in the house. So anyone out there, yeah, give umpiring a go.
Sounds like a great recommendation. You've been listening to Forest Chat, where we talk about individual endeavour in Western Australia, what it takes, what it means, and how you do it. I'm your host, Paul Vandermeer, and in today's episode, we talked with Blake Glossop about football umpiring. Remember, there are 4 ways to get involved with Forest Chat. Share the domain forest.chat with your friends and family and people you meet. When you subscribe, you get advance notice of episodes. Listen to the episodes at forest.chat/episodes. If you do something that other people may find interesting, book an interview at forest.chat/interview. If you want to support a local business, book an advert at forest.chat/advert. I'm looking forward to joining you with our next guest. Until next time, enjoy making it happen.